Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on the Comptia Security Plus course. Penetration testing. Penetration testing is a method of evaluating the security of a system by simulating one or more attacks on that system. One of the differences between regular vulnerability scanning and penetration testing is that vulnerability scanning may be passive or active, whereas penetration testing will be active. Generally, vulnerability scans will not exploit found threats, but penetration testing will definitely exploit those threats. Another difference is that vulnerability scanning will seek out all vulnerabilities and weaknesses within an organization, but penetration tests are designed to determine the impact of a particular threat against an organization. For each individual threat, a different penetration test will be planned. A penetration test, pen test for short, can be done blind, as in black box testing, where the tester has little or no knowledge of the computer infrastructure or environment that is being tested. This simulates an attack from a person who is unfamiliar with the system. White box testing is converse, where the tester is provided with complete knowledge of the computer, user credentials, infrastructure and environment to be tested. And grey box testing is when the tester is given limited inside knowledge of the system or network. Generally, penetration testing is performed on servers or network devices that face the internet publicly. This would be an example of external security testing, when a test is conducted from outside the organization's security perimeter. One common pen test technique is the pivot. Once an attacker or tester has gained access to a system with an initial exploit, the pivot allows for movement to other systems in the network. Pivoting might occur through the same exploit used to compromise the first system, a second exploit, or information discovered when accessing a previous system, also known as pillaging. Pivoting can be prevented through the use of host-based IDS and IPS secure coding, network-based solutions such as Unified Threat Management (UTM), and of course good solid network and system planning. Another technique is that of persistence. As the name implies, an attacker tester will attempt to reconnect at a later date using a backdoor, privilege escalation and cryptographic keys. Whatever the method, it would have to endure reboots of the target system. Consider developing systems that are non-persistent by using a master image and then utilizing snapshots, reverting to those known states, rolling back to known good configurations, and using live boot media. Another exploit is the race condition. This is a difficult exploit to perform because it takes advantage of the small window of time between when a service is used and its corresponding security control is executed in an application or OS, or when the temporary files are created. It can be defined an anomalous behavior due to a dependence on timing of events. Race conditions, also known as time of check (TOC) or time of use (TOU) attacks. Imagine that you are tasked with changing the permissions to a folder or changing the rights in an ACL. If you remove all the permissions and apply new permissions, then there will be a short period of time where the resource and system might be vulnerable. This depends on the system used, how it defaults, and how well you have planned your security architecture. That was a basic example, but the race condition is more common with the programming of an application. This exploit can be prevented by proper secure of coding applications and planning of the system and network architecture. Following are a couple of methodologies for accomplishing penetration testing. The open secure security testing methodology manual, OSSTMM. This manual and corresponding methodology define the proper way to conduct security testing. It adheres to the scientific method. The manual is freely obtained from ISECOM. NIST penetration testing. This is discussed in the document P800115. This document and methodology is less thorough than OSSTMM. However, many organizations find it satisfactory because it comes from the Department of US government, and at times it refers to the OSSTMM instead of going into more detail. The Open Vulnerability and Assessment Language, OVAL, is the standard designed to regulate the transfer of secure public information across networks and the internet, utilizing any security tools and services available at the time. It is an international standard but is funded by the US Department of Homeland Security. A worldwide OVAL community contributes to the standard, storing OVAL content in several locations such as MITRE Corporation, http oval.mitre.org. OVAL can be defined in two parts: the OVAL language and the OVAL interpreter. OVAL language. 3 different XML schemas have been developed that act as the framework of OVAL: system testing information, system state analysis, assessment results reporting. OVAL is not a language like C++, but is an XML schema that defines and describes the XML documents to be created for use with OVAL. OVAL interpreter. A reference developed to ensure that the correct syntax is used by comparing it to OVAL schemas and definitions. Several downloads are associated with the OVAL interpreter and help files and forms that enable security people to check their work for accuracy. OVAL has several uses, one of which is a tool to standardize security advisory distribution. Software vendors need to publish vulnerabilities in a standard machine readable format by including an authoring tool, definitions repository and definition evaluator. OVAL enables users to regulate their security advisories. Other uses for OVAL include vulnerability assessment, patch management, auditing, threat indicators, and so on. Some of the entities that use OVAL include Hewlett-Packard, Red Hat, CA Inc., and the US Army, CERDEC Communications, Electronics, Research, Development and Engineering Center. Assessing vulnerability with security tools. Until now we have talked about processes, methodologies and concepts, but without actual security tools, testing, analyzing and assessing cannot be accomplished. This section delves into the security assessment tools you might use in the field today and shows how to interpret the results that you receive from those tools. Computers and networks are actually vulnerable. Whether it is an operating system or an appliance installed out of the box, they are inherently secure. Vulnerabilities could come in the form of backdoors or open ports. They could also be caused after installation due to poor design. To understand what can be affected, security administrators should possess thorough computer and network documentation, and if they don't already, they should develop it themselves. Tools such as Microsoft Visio and network mapping tools can help to create proper network documentation. Then tools such as vulnerability scanners, protocol analyzers and password crackers should be used to assess the level of vulnerability on a computer network. When vulnerabilities are found, they should be eliminated or reduced as much as possible. Finally, scanning tools should be used again to prove that the vulnerabilities to the computer network have been removed. You will find that most out of the tools described in this section are used by security administrators and hackers alike. The former group used the tools to find vulnerabilities and mitigate risk. The latter group uses the tools to exploit those vulnerabilities. However, remember that not all hackers are malevolent. Some are just curious, but they can cause just as much damage and downtime as a malicious hacker. Network mapping. Network documentation is an important part of defining the desired state of security. To develop adequate detailed network documentation, network mapping software should be used with network diagramming software. Network mapping is the study of physical and logical connectivity of networks. One example of automated network mapping software is the Network Topology Mapper by SolarWinds. This product can map elements on layers 1 through 3 of the OSI model, giving you a thorough representation of what is on the network. This type of network scan is not for the weak of bandwidth. It should be attempted only during off hours if possible, otherwise when the network is at its lowest point of usage. Most network mapping programs show routers, layer 3 switches, client computers, servers and virtual machines. You can usually export the mapped contents directly to Microsoft Visio, a handy time saver. Plenty of other free and pay versions of network mapping software are available. A quick internet search displays a list. Try out different programs, get to know them and decide what works best for your infrastructure. Wireless networks can be surveyed in a similar fashion. Applications such as AirMagnet can map out the wireless clients on your network, and apps such as NetStumber can locate available WAPs, which are wireless access points. Both can output the information you want to aid in your network documentation efforts. When you are working on your network documentation, certain areas of the network probably need to be filled in manually. Some devices are though to scan, and you have to rely on your eyes and other network administrators' knowledge to get a clear picture of the network. Network documentation can be written out or developed with a network diagram program such as Microsoft Visio. A free trial is available at Microsoft's Office website. Visio can make all kinds of diagrams and flow charts that can be real time savers and helpful planning for network administrators and security people. An example of a network diagram is shown in figure 12.1. This network diagram was created by mapping a now defunct network with network mapping software, exporting the results to Visio and then making some tweaks to the diagram manually. Names and IP addresses, among other things, were changed to protect the innocent. This documentation helped to discover a few weaknesses such as the lack of firewalling and other DMZ issues such as the lack of CID or notation on the DMZ IP network. Just the act of documenting revealed some other issues with some of the servers on the DMZ, making it much easier to mitigate risk. When the risks were mitigated, the resulting final network documentation acted as a foundation for later security analysis and comparison to future baselines. At times, you might be tempted to put passwords into a network diagram. Don't do it. If there are too many passwords to memorize and you need to keep passwords stored somewhere, the best way is to write them on a piece of paper and lock that paper in a fireproof, non-removable safe, perhaps off-site. The people, admins who know the combination to the safe should be limited. Don't keep passwords on any computers. You might also want to keep a list of IP addresses, computer names, and so on. This can be done on paper within Excel or Access, or can be developed within your network mapping program and export it as you want. I find that Excel works great because I can sort different categories by column header to summarize. Network mapping can help in several of the vulnerability assessment phases. Be sure to use network mapping programs and document your network thoroughly. It can aid you when baselining and analyzing your networks and systems. Vulnerability scanning. Vulnerability scanning is a technique that identifies threats on your network but does not exploit them. When you are ready to assess the level of vulnerability on the network, it is wise to use a general vulnerability scanner and a port scanner or two. By scanning all the systems on the network, you determine the attack surface of those systems, and you can gain much insight as to the risks that you need to mitigate and malicious activity that might already be going on underneath your nose. One such vulnerability scanner is called NIST. This is one of many exploitation framework tools, but it is very commonly deployed tool used to perform vulnerability configuration and compliance assessments. The tool can use a lot of resources, so it is wise to try and perform a scan off hours. Sometimes a full-blown vulnerability scan isn't necessary or within budget, but there will be times when you simply want to scan ports or run other basic tests. An example of a good port scanner is Nmap. Although this tool has other functionality in addition to port scanning, it is probably best known for its port scanning capability. Figure 12.2 shows an example of a port scan with Nmap. The scan shows a scan using the SS parameter to a computer system that runs Kerberos port 88, DNS port 53 and web services port 80, among other things. By using a port scanner like this one, you are taking a fingerprint of the operating system. The port scanner tells you what inbound ports are open and their remote computer and what services are running. From this you can discern much more information. For example, what operating system the computer is running, what applications, and so on. In the example in figure 12.2, you can gather the scanned computer is a Microsoft domain controller running additional services. So this is an example of OS fingerprinting. Open ports should be examined. You should be fully aware of the services or processes that use these ports. If services are unnecessary, they should be stopped and disabled. For example, if this computer was indeed a domain controller but wasn't supposed to be a DNS server, the DNS service port 53 should be stopped. Otherwise, the DNS port could act as a vulnerability of the server. Afterward, the computer should be rescanned to ensure that the risk has been mitigated. Non-essential services are often not configured, monitored, or secured by the network administrator. It is imperative that network administrators scan for non-essential services and close any corresponding ports. Even though services may be non-essential, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are not in use maliciously or otherwise. Another excellent tool is Netcat and NCAT, which is generally used in Linux, Unix platforms. It can be used for port scanning, port listening, transferring files, opening raw connections, and as a backdoor into systems as discussed in Chapter 10, Physical Security and Authentication Models. Another tool that can be used to display the ports in use is the netstat command. Examples include netstat, netstat-a, netstat-n, and netstat-an commands. However, this is only for the local computer, but it does show the ports used by remote computers for the sessions that the local computer is running. Tools such as Nmap and Nessus are also known as network enumerators. Enumeration refers to complete listing of items such as port numbers. Network enumerators extract information from servers, including network shares, services running, groups of users, and so on. It is this additional extraction of information enumeration that sets them apart from a basic network mapping tool. This type of enumeration is also referred to as banner grabbing. Banner grabbing is a technique used to find out information web servers, FTP servers, and mail servers. For example, it might be used by a network administrator to take inventory of systems and services running on servers, or it could be used by an attacker to grab information such as an HTTP headers, which can tell the attacker what type of server is running, its version number, and so on. Example of banner grabbing applications include Netcat and Telnet. Aside from the security administrators or perhaps auditors, no one should be running banner grabbing tools on or network enumeration tools in general. A good security admin will attempt to sniff out any unpermitted usage of these tools. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.